$55 billion and nearly 500,000 people employed. According to YouTube, this is the type of economic impact they've made so far on the global economy and specifically in the creator economy. They issued the report. I want to go through the report, talk about a few statistics that can be interesting and insightful for all of us to use, especially if you're in front of the business folks and you're trying to explain to them and articulate why creator economy is so important and why they should be paying attention and co-investing into it with you. I will also give some critical points and things to be on the lookout for, especially if you're gonna use those stats and people try to kind of provide some reasonable objections to it. YouTube made this very nice looking page where they essentially go through some of the high level stats. That's cool. I actually want to look at the report itself because I think report has a lot more of that information and provide it in a very interesting format. So we're not going to go slide by slide. I'm not going to read stuff out to you. I just want to highlight a couple of things that I found interesting. So, sorry, Neil, we're going to skip. This is the CEO of YouTube. We're going to skip his page and really focus on these two key stats, right? You've heard it at the very top. 55 billion in GDP contributed in 2024. And then for the 500,000 FTEs, so full-time employees, supported those jobs in the United States specifically. Those two asterisks and disclaimers do a lot of heavy lifting in this specific context, because when it comes to contribution, right, or supporting a specific stat, you can start going on the fringes and saying hey, but how much of it was really contributed directly versus indirectly? I think it's still a fair mention of the stat when it comes to its effect on the economy, say in this case on GDP. It does require a little bit more of a deep dive in terms of how that number was assembled. I think in your conversations with anyone outside of the creator economy, as this potential stat comes up about the contribution to the global domestic product, right? GDP, gross domestic product. I'm econ major, I should know those things off the top. You want to heavily prefix the fact that there's a lot of ways by which today the creator economy contributes to the actual GDP number from the economic activity, right? Because you have the creator economy brands, you have the creator economy, companies really trying to go enter the space and make the money and generate the revenue this way. You also have external other companies from other industries entering the creator economy and monetizing it. I'm sure that's part of the stat, as well as essentially anything and everyone who is trying to leverage YouTube to promote their product or services. I'm pretty confident they include all of those numbers in. So it's your advertising dollars, it's your revenue dollars from selling the product, it's also your brand partnerships, it's your memberships, it's all the different things that traditionally you can see being leveraged, traditionally can be generated by leveraging YouTube. That's the right way to phrase it. But from the perspective of actual, pure number of how much YouTube on its own generated, the number will be much smaller. That's something you'll probably find on their annual filings. So just something minor, but important to consider that it's more about the general activity that YouTube helps generate in the creator economy. Still an amazing number, don't get me wrong, but important to prefix the fact that it carries a lot of weight to it. And similar for the 500,000, employees, this is also one of those things that they supported those roles. So from that perspective, I'm very confident, and I looked at their methodology as well. It's essentially folks who leverage YouTube, right, from the perspective of supporting their small business, supporting their corporate job. So it can be your brand managers, it can be your VPs of marketing, it can be CEOs who are trying to promote their brand on YouTube. It also can be, again, YouTubers, the creators, going and hiring folks. So from that perspective, again, it's going to be more all-encompassing number. There's a lot of things. There's probably some fuzzy areas where they rounded things up and down a little bit, but something to consider. Whenever you see some of those stats, especially the bigger they are, the more questions you should have about, hey, what was the methodology behind actually arriving at that number? So that's why that's as much as we're going to spend on those two. I just wanted to highlight the fact that you want to really ask that question. Hey, how did you come up with that number? Moving further through the report, again, you'll see some mentions of some creators. That's all awesome. I'm skipping some of the intro slides. This is one of the slides I wanted to stop on and talk a little bit about. From the perspective of how does the YouTube's activity impact the creators? And I think this is an important circle of life that I've mentioned in other forms when I talk about like the creator economy value, flows and how the money flows through the creator economy, different ways by which you can go grow your creator brand. All of this is kind of like at the very, very, like it's a 50, 60, 70,000 foot view, so to speak, but it's still important to talk about if you've never seen something like this before. First, a cool stat, the fact that before essentially the end of the year, YouTube paid, right, over $70 billion to all the creators, which is awesome. I think this is a cool stat. This is an important stat to consider. Why to this day I say that YouTube is the cornerstone of the creator economy, and the creators really rely on it to go and grow their businesses and maintain their businesses. And that's where you see even the live streamers, you see your TikTokers, you see your short form content, even some of the people who just write and do podcasts, they eventually gradually move over and produce some content on YouTube as well for this exact reason. Because YouTube provides the best today commercial structure to support the creators and their businesses. From the perspective of this life cycle, right, the important things to consider that you always need to keep in mind is that it always starts and ends with content. In my opinion, there are different values, and we'll talk about in a second, right? But from my philosophy, the viewer comes to you for essentially entertainment, information, or education, right? And from that perspective alone, what are they seeking for those three areas? They're seeking content that covers them. So the quality content will always prevail and will always supersede in the importance of everything else. Because if you don't have good content, chances are of folks actually sticking around and contributing economically to your brand, to any other brand that works with you and kind of like signs a brand partnership, are pretty damn low. So something for you to consider, that it always starts and stops with the content. And as always, right, when you have certain jobs that you're fulfilling, so to speak, with your content, the audiences will eventually discover you. As they discover you, as your audience, stats grow, the advertisers will start buying more and more ads. You're going to be part of the partner program. You will see some brand deals coming your way, and you will start getting that fair share of the money that essentially YouTube charges those brands, or you charge the brand directly through the brand partnership, and that starts creating the business. I've made countless videos at this point about specifically this section. When you start thinking about building a business, just know there's nothing wrong about trying to go build the next Mr. Beast brand, Feastables, have humongous studios, hundreds of people working for you. And there's nothing wrong about still being the guy in the bedroom, in front of the camera, making content, even if you have 50 million plus subscribers. First of all, if you achieve that level with that kind of content, kudos to you. You have an amazing personality and the type of content you nailed, but also to each their own. And you don't have to feel forced to go and create business, build different things, sell physical products. As much as I love that kind of stuff, and that's my area of expertise, one of the first things I always jokingly say, part of my job is to convince creator to not do all those things, because it's a lot of work, it's a lot of distraction from making quality content. And if you don't make quality content, you don't get to benefit from all of those things. So something to keep in mind. Next thing that I also like from the perspective of monetization is, again, this kind of like 10-way circle of all the different opportunities by which the creator can monetize. And I'll just quickly blast through them. But again, it's important for you to keep in mind, this is why YouTube can pay up to $70 billion, right? So far. This is how many creators support their businesses, support themselves, quit the jobs, and essentially make money full-time on YouTube. And it's your ads and AdSense that's essentially when Google Go sells ad placement against the videos, and those videos are being played in the pre-roll, mid-roll, or sometimes post-roll, assuming they still have it. I haven't seen those in quite a while. YouTube Shopping. So YouTube bought a couple of brands, but they also allow you to interconnect, right, two different shopping pages through YouTube page. So if a certain video, say you're making fashion brand for your creator brand, and you're promoting some sort of like, garments that you've made, you can link them under your video and people can go and buy them directly without necessarily living too far the experience of YouTube. Channel memberships, people can pay you on a monthly basis and essentially get access to more unique content that's hidden behind a paywall. They can also potentially engage with you more. They're going to be more visible in your comment section, things of that nature. Super stickers, it's very similar to kind of like some of the other social medias where they buy a graphic visual that can be very visible. It's a way to kind of like celebrate you as a creator, but also a way for the YouTube make a little bit money, give you a share of that money as well. Ticketing, I haven't seen too much, but the idea is that you can have like ticketed events online. Think of it as almost like your pay-per-views, right? If you ever watch fighting, UFC, things of that nature. I haven't seen too many creators leveraging it still to this day. And there are companies like Patreon that right now kind of like offers those solutions as well. And there were a few other ones that folks used in the past. They've been kind of like acquired, reacquired. They've been, rolling up into other different software companies. So some people use it when it's applicable to your kind of content. On YouTube, I haven't seen it too much. YouTube Premium. So if you did not know, as a creator, you actually get a percentage share of YouTube Premium revenue. So like I subscribe to YouTube Premium, and every creator that I watch through a given month gets a small portion of my fee that essentially YouTube attributes. Can get pretty decent. I check out my video about LTT, Linus Tech Tips. For them, on a per view basis, if I recall correctly, the revenue from the AdSense on the non-paying viewers was actually, I think, less than the revenue that they're making on the premium, which is kind of fascinating. So something for you to kind of like keep in mind and check out. Brand Connect, something YouTube does, and they're slowly like trying, I think, to test the waters. Today, if you make brand partnership deals, you're not necessarily getting YouTube involved. You kind of like work with your agent, your manager, and directly with the brand, and you guys strike the deal. YouTube have been looking at this for a while, and they've been trying to figure out how to insert themselves between the creators and the brands. Because, I mean, realistically, that's a good area of business if they can facilitate and they can streamline some things. Maybe creator doesn't need an agent potentially, right? So YouTube can play their role of an agent and get them in touch with them. So this is what the Brand Connect is. Essentially, it's a way to connect some of those brands with the creators and help the creator actually secure the deals and get paid and, go through the entire process and not have to worry about necessarily having 3 people on their team managing brand relationships. Super chats, again, if you ever been on anywhere during kind of like live events, live streaming on YouTube, you can get those like kind of like premium highlighted super chats. You pay like 5, 10, 20, 50 bucks, whatever you decide to do. And it stays there for longer. And people can kind of like, the creator who streams, for example, can see those and respond to you. Super thanks, again, something similar, but usually I see it on the VODs. Long-form content, essentially, you can say thank you to a creator for amazing work that they've done. Maybe you don't want to subscribe to the monthly channel membership, or you don't want to give like a sticker or something like that because you find it silly. You can say, hey, thank you for making this amazing piece of content. Here's $3 for you for that specific video. I've done that. There were like videos or tutorials or things of that nature that I just came across, and by the way, gifts kind of like in a similar category. I just came out, I was like, listen, this like saved me 10 hours worth of work, a bunch of research, and potentially buying some other third-party resource to do this. So I'll kick this creator like $5 as a thank you, as like a small tip, right? For all their hard work. So cool, a lot of interesting ways by which you can monetize. And this is where kind of like when you go back to this 70 billion number, this is where it's all coming from. There are a lot of ways for the creators today to monetize their brand and create something sustainable based on YouTube alone. Now let's keep going back to the stats. Okay, now from the perspective of personalization of content, I'm not going to spend too much time in here because they essentially talk about the fact that the personalized recommendations for 70% of the surveyed creators are important to grow their audience, which is absolutely true. Essentially what this means is that for you as a creator to cut it through the noise, right, of so much content being posted. And you can see right here, 20 million videos uploaded every single day. And there are over 20 billion videos on YouTube. So me adding this video just adds like a dust of sand on the pile of already like a huge dune, right? If that's how my content would have been discoverable, you would never see this video in the first place. But the fact that you saw this video means that somehow, somewhere, the algorithm decided that you as a viewer is a decent match for this kind of content, and hopefully you found it interesting, which I absolutely agree with that. From the perspective of 67% who say that YouTube is essential, that's absolutely correct in my opinion. Through all the conversations with the creators, through all the different things that I've seen so far, YouTube continues to be that cornerstone. It's not always the primary platform, but for you as a creator, unless you're completely strapped for the resources and time, not having some presence on YouTube is like a major disservice to what you're doing with your creator career. And then from the perspective of obviously 71% see the opportunity that YouTube provides to make money, and it's absolutely true. We just went through like two graphic visuals worth of that, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but those are absolutely correct facts in my opinion. Casey Ho, again, shout out to her. She built a brand for like active wear essentially and some accessories. I think primarily for Pilates and yoga, if I recall correctly. I've once done like deeper dive content, but I don't recall too much about it at this point, unfortunately. But yeah, Pilates is a big brand. It was on Target and several other major stores, right? So it's growing and it's building up, and it's all based off of her brand on YouTube, and especially the racketeering kind of like trajectory of her career through the pandemic. She saw a lot of benefit, and her husband did an amazing job taking advantage of the audience that they generated through essentially the COVID lockdowns, with a lot of people trying to stay active and looking for content. She converted that into the dedicated audience. From that audience, she went and created an amazing product. And that product now is both sold online, but also you can find it in physical stores near you, which is really awesome. So congrats and kudos to her. Sean Evans and Hot Ones, also don't need to spend too much time about them. Also spoke about them at length, but the interesting idea is the fact that this show would have never existed without YouTube, right? At the end of the day, to clear this kind of a show, on a major television, you have to go through so many hurdles and know so many people. With this case, it was essentially Chris and Sean, the two co-founders of the first week, of specifically Hot Ones. They came up with this idea and they said, hey, this can be an interesting format, let's try it. And now what, like 20 seasons later, like almost a decade worth of shows, they've been going pretty strong, and recently acquired that brand away from their parent brand for like $80 million. Transparently, I think they overpaid, but story for another day, for maybe a deeper dive video. But amazing brand, and unfortunately I don't know much about Perkins Brothers, although I've seen some of their content. So that's not kind of like the point and the goal that I want to get here. I want to look at more stats. I love stats. So this specifically now talks about the impact of YouTube on small and medium-sized businesses. And this is absolutely critical, right? Like, let's quickly run through it and I'll give you my opinion on this. So essentially 79% of the surveyed small businesses said YouTube is an essential platform, right? Like 71% of them highlighted that it helps them grow their revenue. And 70% of them see higher activity of the platform thanks to YouTube. This is the kind of stuff I've been talking about a lot to the business folks that I work with, right? So part of my life is kind of like working with the creators and helping with the commercial strategy and operations. Part of it doing exactly the same with different businesses right out there, primarily SaaS companies. And it's one of those things that I've recognized and I've seen develop more and more and more. Today, if you want to open a store, if you want to open a brand, which is like selling SaaS, selling physical product, again, you're doing yourself disservice if you don't have any presence, at least on YouTube. In many cases, depending on how visual your product is, say if it's a restaurant, you wouldn't want to have an Instagram account, a TikTok, maybe if that's the vibe for you, but definitely you want to have, your tentacles kind of like in a few different platforms. YouTube is essential because thanks to how Google search works today, AI is kind of like changing it, but not really that much. Still, if I'm looking for a particular physical product, like I'm doing a research for a soundbar for the office that I work at, I go through the cycle of doing some research, looking at some top rankings, going to YouTube, watching video reviews, watching opinions, looking at the close-ups. YouTube is essential for me. So for you, if you're selling a soundbar, you want to make sure there's enough content about it out there to help someone like me make the right decision. And I go through this cycle pretty much for any major purchase. I always go through that cycle of reading something online, but end up watching a ton of YouTube content and listening to people providing their opinion on it. Same goes for you for the physical, for digital product. If you're selling SaaS product, doing education on it. There's one product that I'm working with, one good size media company, and they use that tool internally. I wanted to like brush up and study a little bit the tool, understand like, hey, how's this tool used? What are some of the best practices? There's like 2 videos that you can find on it and barely any text. And it's like major miss for them because they're missing an opportunity to educate folks outside of their ecosystem. And you have to go to call their sales, call their success team, work with them to get access to that content. This is silly. You want to make sure you have that video content out there, upfront, available for free so that people can learn about your business. And of course, because of this, and thanks to those stats that we just saw, it helps drive more revenue, helps drive more activity, helps people walk in the door already know about your business. leaving kind of like that uncomfortable stage of like trying to familiarize yourself with everything, it's all gone thanks to the fact that you have that content. So no matter what kind of business you are, if you happen to be a person, a business owner, work for the business, and you have access to this kind of information that can be shared outside publicly, it can help improve that initial introduction of the individual to your brand. Make sure it's somewhere out there, especially in the video format and on YouTube. So absolutely believe it wholeheartedly. I think it's an important factor, and it's something every single brand should consider, even if to a very small extent. All right, to quickly blast through a couple more stats and we can wrap up. Again, I'm skipping some of the opinions and stats. I'll leave the link, by the way, down below in the description. Feel free to check it out. But this is kind of like what they're doing, right? Like they're highlighting the fact that there's some actually folks who created the brand on YouTube, but also have like a real farm and they do the work there. And that's absolutely true in a real use case, right? So something all of us should consider. The other part of it, again, this is what I call more of kind of like an informed stage, right? So either inform or educate. So for you as a viewer, you would find the content related to some of those businesses in that category, right? The next part of it, the shared learning, is really kind of like emphasizes a lot more the education side of things. And it's absolutely correct that this was one of the prime use cases for YouTube for ages, because today there's so much content on the platform that enables you to learn skills or learn how to do things, change a battery in your car, crochet, do some other things, study languages in some cases, play a guitar, right? And there's a ton of value to it. So, and I kind of like highlighting that 66% of the parents actually think it's very important. YouTube is a very important factor in the discovery of the world for their kids. And it's absolutely true. Like my kids love Mark Rober content, and that helped them understand a lot more about the sciences. And 74% obviously of parents also think that it helps their kids learn. Small thing I'll call out there is that it really depends on the type of content, and even on YouTube Kids, sometimes you can find some, what I would call more like a slop content, popcorn content, junk food content, where it's like a lot of people yelling at the camera while playing video games, and it's alongside some highly educational video, right? Which sometimes can be a little bit dense, unless, again, you're someone like Mark Rober who really knows how to maintain the attention, especially from the younger audience. A lot of creators do not master it to the same extent. So you can see sometimes the positive effect, but it's really hard to kind of like, you almost like need to be there as a parent with your kid to keep them focused on the right kind of content. But it's absolutely true that it makes a major impact on the education. And these are the interesting ones. So I want to talk about, but also highlight some kind of like, considerations that we should keep in mind. The fact that 78% of the teachers actually agree, right, with the fact that YouTube helps outside of the classroom, which is absolutely fine, right? There are certain topics that maybe for the exam the kid needs to prepare for. YouTube is a great place to go find the resources for it. You have to be careful, again, whenever it comes to education and information, the sources and how accurate they are. So we'll kind of like put an asterisk on this, but in general, yes, it is a very good thing. And then from the perspective of the engagement, yes, I can see the teachers being able to engage with their students more and make potentially dense topics more entertaining by finding the right creators to produce content around it, who produce the content around it. So again, that comes back to my point that there is levels to the quality and engagement of the content, and some topics that can be very like bond market can be very dense to study on your own and read in the paper. Actually, there are a couple of YouTubers who did an amazing job explaining the current state of bond markets and why they move and how they move. And it was very entertaining as well. So like, as someone who's also worked in finance for a long time, I found it nice and refreshing, and kudos to those creators. So you absolutely can find this. And then 90% of the teachers do use some of the YouTube content in their lessons and assignments. And this is where I'll like put a small, maybe bolded asterisk on it, because what I've also learned, and this is a lot of the stats are US based, right, is that teachers use it for a good reason as part of the YouTube assignments, as part of the homework assignments, the YouTube videos, but also for bad reasons. And primarily it relates back to the fact that like levels of reading are going down, the folks are not as literate anymore, the attention spans are not as good, and sometimes for teachers it's a little bit easier, instead of like trying to force them to read, 50-page book, just go give them a video to watch. So Part of it is good because it actually teaches and educates, but part of it actually stems from the fact that the educational system is not necessarily equipped to handle some of the changes that are happening in the world from the technological perspective. So they kind of like default and say like, hey, there's this YouTuber, just go check it out, and it's going to cover the topic, which sometimes can be a good thing. Sometimes, as I said, well, I have concerns and questions and things that I would and would not trust YouTube to teach my kids. Let's put it that way. And again, there's some interesting examples of the creators who are in that area. The big thing is this stat, I think, is very important. I absolutely agree. And it comes back to my whole philosophy is the fact that creator economy and the videos specifically are there to inform, educate, or entertain. 92% of the people get information and knowledge. Information being informed, knowledge being educated. And it's absolutely correct. I think YouTube is an amazing place for that. Like this is the hill I'm willing to die on, the fact that when it comes to resource of information, the quality of information, right? And let me go full screen for this one. YouTube is second to none. This platform has so much information, any topic, any subject. There are creators like myself who are interested in this like niche subjects, and they go all out and create like a 2-hour documentary. You're into Warhammer 40K, you'll have a person there describing a lore for like a 3-hour video. You're into, again, learning some skill, there'll be an expert person in that area going and explaining how it works. You want to just go and get informed on certain subjects, you can go and find it there. Like recently, I was just curious about the history of Portugal. There are amazing videos describing the entire history of Portugal and how it came about, how it came to power, how it lost its power. Like, again, it's all by folks like us, and just turning on the camera, being very passionate about the topic and going through kind of like creating an interesting piece of content. Wikipedia is great, has a lot of information. Other platforms, different libraries, they have it all great. But YouTube evolved into such a unique space that I'm excited to be part of, space that I'm excited to be contributing to. Among those like 20 billion videos, about 1,000 of them are mine. So it's exciting. I love that part. And I think this is the most critical piece of information, that whether you're looking across, again, information area, you're trying to inform people, you're trying to educate people, you're trying to entertain people and producing interesting entertainment content, or your business trying to promote your products or services, educate about your product and services, inform about your products and services, YouTube is an amazing place to do so. There's so many opportunities, and the entire ecosystem is so structured right now in a good way that I think, again, I'll keep repeating it, and that's part of the theme of this video. You are doing yourself a disservice as a creator or as a brand if you're not participating and not have some presence on YouTube. Yeah, and from then on out, a lot of things on the culture side. Again, I value it as someone who is multicultural and kind of like coming from a very diverse and mixed family, heavily mixed family. I love the fact that the cultural exposure is amazing on YouTube. I'm all about the business on this channel, so I'll skip that, but I love it. I love representation, so you can never take this away from me. And again, this is an important factor from the diversity and just the representation of the culture, is the fact that whatever you're in, you will find people on YouTube producing content about things that you're passionate about. And if they don't, that's your opportunity to go and create some content and potentially build one of those brands and be a creator like this who can go and represent the entire community and do a great job while at it. So I'll kind of like skip through some of these things on the cultural side and check out if you're curious about some of the terms, because sometimes I remember and sometimes I'm bad at going and describing what like SMB stands for, what FTE stands for. I think I've done description for both of them, but just something important that you can find here, as well as if you'll scroll further, you can actually find some survey methodology, which gives you some understanding, not as deep as I want. Some of these other parts give a much better taste, but yeah, that's about it. Like, as a report, as it stands, it gives a lot of interesting stats. Where I would recommend you to use them, you just have them handy for potential conversations with brand partners, with folks who are interested about learning why you're so passionate about the creator economy, because this is how you educate folks. You put numbers on the board and you explain how the work that we do affects positively the economy and creates the jobs and does all these beautiful things. But it's also kind of cool to remind yourself that 20 years ago, YouTube just celebrated 20th anniversary. It was, again, a web video format website for dating. And then you had your, day in a zoo video, and then things just took off and got crazy. it's amazing to be part of this platform. I've been obviously like consuming content on YouTube for I don't know how long at this point, right? Like I wasn't there at the very, very beginning, but definitely probably 5, 6 years into it, I started watching YouTube and YouTube creators, but then creating my own content for the past like 8 plus years, 10 technically. I had a very short stint about 10 years ago, but kind of like dropped it and picked it up again 2 years later. And yeah, for the past like 8 years that I've been super active and posting weekly and daily, just seeing this amazing growth and seeing the impact that we're making, seeing the creators who used to be like laughed at 6, 7 years ago when I was making content, people would discover my channel, people would be like, oh yeah, that's cool. So you're like Logan Paul, right? Or like you are like whoever else was hot creator at that point. And they kind of like rolled their eyes. For them, it was, oh, you're just, trying to be just like, not even creator, not even the influencer at that point. It was just like, oh, this popular person who is just good equivalent. You're trying to be an actor. It's like people find you, I don't know, we're waiting the tables using the cliche somewhere in LA, and they're like, oh, you're here because you're going to all these auditions and trying to be famous. Like there was kind of like the vibe you would get from folks when they're commenting on you being a creator. Fast forward to today, I meet people. I meet other parents in my kids' school who are creators. I meet them. They talk about the creator economy, or I meet other folks who don't even bat their eyes because they're watching other creators and they're like, oh yeah, I know this creator because like they educate me on this, or like I know this creator because I watch them, they inform me about that, or like, hey, yeah, I really like this creator and they're so entertaining. Like folks are engrossed in the industry. Folks love YouTube. YouTube took over now as number one on the podcasting. YouTube is number one on the TVs, right? So people mostly use their live streaming TVs to watch YouTube these days, not even cable and some of the other streaming platforms. YouTube is trying to get into live streaming. Some intermediate success, more to be desired. Same goes for shorts. And obviously they're not in photo or pure audio, although you can absolutely listen to YouTube. I do it all the time. I listen to podcasts on YouTube while the phone is in my pocket and the headphones in my ears, doing some chores around the house. So as a platform, YouTube is an amazing place. It contributed a lot, as much as it may sound that I'm here like, trying to sell you the platform. You're watching this video on YouTube. I don't post these videos anywhere else. So like, this is an amazing platform. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. But when you compare all the progress that have been made over the course of 20 years to give you all these amazing stats and give you this $55 billion contribution in a year and the support of like $500,000 jobs, like this is a tangible, amazing impact. So I'm very excited to see where the platform will go. I'm excited, and that's why like I love posting on YouTube. I don't really go anywhere else too much because between the tools, the audience, just the atmosphere itself, I love it. And it was kind of cool to go look through it and, celebrate it. I'll leave the gripes. I have plenty of videos talking about the gripes with the platform for some other content. For this one, we'll leave it on a positive note. Love the platform. Appreciate all the folks who do their hardest job maintaining the platform, improving the platform, helping us creators have a place to go, dump our thoughts for 30 minutes and just go talk about some random topic. So love it. Appreciate you for sticking around and watching this video. Let me know in the comment section below if you have some interesting memories about YouTube, maybe some core interesting things that you've learned, or just in general, some moments that stuck in your memory and you would want to share them. Drop them in the comment section below. Otherwise, I'm excited to continue looking at the direction of travel for YouTube, and I'll see you next Saturday talking about some other business topic within the creator economy. Peace.